Hey everyone, today we're looking through the biggest issues in Dead by Daylight. I thought instead of being really negative and saying things I didn't like, I'd go the route of saying things I'm more unhappy with, and think need some changes. I'll also be suggesting some here and there. Many of these things though are kind of big, and I don't claim to really know how to properly fix things. My suggestions are more for a bit of fun, and just a few ideas. I'm gonna quick fire through these, I'll segment them as I go. Of course, let me know if you think there's any I missed down below. One of DBD's biggest issues now, I think, is maps. Multiple maps are far too big and need to be made smaller. Maps such as Area of Crows, RPD, Garden of Joy, Ormond, and Shattered Square. These maps need a good 20 to 30% of their size knocked off. Second map thing is that some maps are far too harsh on certain characters. Maps like Eerie are not particularly fair for Trapper, where his traps practically glow against the sand. It feels like a lot of maps now are created purely on visual spectacle, and every killer isn't fairly considered. It's a lot, and I imagine very tough, but that's how the game is. Map spawn and placement issues is another big thing. The most recent update caused some very strange tiles, and objects that cause strange collision. On top of this, some maps feel too palette heavy, and others are almost like complete dead zones. Shelter Woods. Map offerings, I think, need to be reduced to an increased percentage chance rather than a guarantee, as currently maps have so much power over the outcome of a trial, and you can pretty much choose it with an offering, which isn't very fair. Maybe survivor played offerings increase chances by 25%, and killer offerings increase chances by 100%, because currently for both sides it's 9,999%. Reworks don't seem to solve issues with the maps, and sometimes even make them worse off than they were before. Many of the maps changed in the Realm Beyond update were made a lot more bearable, but others feel less balanced than before. For example, Father Campbell's Chapel. Breakable walls still break the flow on many maps, and I think many should be either completely sealed off, or be replaced with either a pallet or a window. A maximum of 1 or 2 walls on any given map I think is healthy, allowing a killer to choose to open paths, or keep them closed for more control or strategy. But the current number on some maps feels kind of silly. There are loops in the game that are straight unfun, and don't feel enjoyable to loop for one side or the other. There are particularly some newer tiles which are just a bit bizarre. Next, I want to address specifically killer-sided issues. There are multiple killers that need complete add-on overhauls. These killers include Demogorgon, Oni, Deathslinger, Executioner, Twins, and Sadako. Add-ons have a lot of issues with power scaling and their rarities. Many add-ons are really great, but count as common, and others are dreadful and somehow iridescent. I think some revision would be good. Older killers I think need sizable quality of life updates to have them fit the game as it is today. They were built for a completely different game back in 2016, and I think they need additions to their kit or sizable buffs to keep up. There are too many killers currently in the game, and the ones we do have need some focus and alterations before new ones are added. I think the addition of the Knight really outlined this issue. AI as a whole for the killer side doesn't seem quite polished enough, and for a character like Nemesis, it isn't so bad, as his zombies are secondary, but for Knight, the issue is clearer. There feels like a lot of bias when it comes to the killer side of the game. Some killers receive many updates and changes, and others barely any. Characters like Blight are left to be powerful, but for some reason Twins or Pig need to be nerfed again. Queue times are still very long, and there seems to be little in the way of fixing this really, other than trying to encourage more people to play this role. Doing generators is still really boring, especially since the addition of another 10 seconds onto generators. I think some kind of additional mechanic or skill check type could be something that would make them more interesting. Keys and maps should be reworked and given a clearer purpose, as currently they have a lot of overlap, and not enough utility, with them rarely appearing in matches. The same goes for the add-ons for these items, as currently there are many that do little to nothing and are simply not used. Most people, I imagine, just have a bunch of random map add-ons they never touch. Survivors still lack more meaningful side objectives, and their fun is often related to how much the killer interacts with them, and in many ways, how good the killer is. There is no system in place when a teammate decides to give up. If someone decides to take chances to get out the game, or DC, the game is almost instantly lost. Specifically for survivors, there is a distinct lack of worthwhile items in the blood web to actually go for. There are too many perks currently in the game, and it takes a while to unlock them. I think an easy way to alleviate this is to make all the original characters' perks into universal ones. This gives an easier entry level for new players too. There are a bunch of perks in the game that are very niche, or just don't really do anything. For example, This Is Not Happening, Red Herring, and Slippery Meat. These perks, I think, can be niche, but they need to have more of an established role within the game. The luck mechanic does basically nothing, and with multiple perks relying on this mechanic, as well as a set of offerings, it feels like it should get some attention. The meta is still often very stale, and needs to be moved around more often. Perks like Dead Hard, despite its numerous nerfs, is still one of the most used perks in the game. For killers, this mainly comes in the form of slowdown perks. Perks as a whole lack balance, with there always being a set few at the very top, and others leagues below. 6.1.0 did some work to change this, however it quickly feels like we're slipping back into how it was before. The stuff in the store costs way too much. Yeah. There should be a better and more even distribution of skins across all characters. For someone like Haddie, who was an anniversary character and hinted at through the lore for a long time, it feels disappointing that she is neglected on this front. Skins for original characters should all be purchasable with iridescent shards. The prices to actually acquire these skins is already very expensive. I think at the very least, all original character skins should be obtainable this way. Lots of tome challenges are just kind of boring. I would prefer tougher and more rewarding challenges over lots of grindy and repetitive ones. Things like recolors feel as if they are largely there to pad some of the store for the characters, and I think a better use of them would be to have at least some be obtainable through challenges, by using the character you are playing. The shrine still feels kind of useless once you've obtained everything. It would be nice if it served a purpose for people who no longer need it. Maybe if you use the featured shrine perks in-game, you receive a BP bonus of some kind. This could also encourage different perks to be used more often. The BP grind has been reduced significantly, and it's been amazing, having a more efficient and rewarding system. However, it's still very boring to unlock blood webs. I think there should be an autocomplete feature, with options to select the cheapest route on the blood web, or for it to automatically select certain add-ons or perks. Mass or more efficient unlocks, basically. There are far too many blood web items in the game that are useless. For items you have no use for, such as certain offerings you never intend to use, a trade-in system would be nice. Maybe it could be more of a system where you could collect 5 of an unwanted green add-on or offering, and you could trade it in for a preferred single green add-on or offering. Devotion levels still feel kind of pointless. A system of special rewards for leveling devotion would be cool, or maybe just even something like an evolving emblem, like the current level system could be nice. Lore isn't a category many people care about, but I do think it's not in the best spot at the moment. Simply put though, not many people read it. This is in part down to its accessibility. There's a good Pixel Bush video you can watch on that. I think largely though, the lore needs to have more pull and intrigue, and a little more to encourage you to want to read it. The lore of the game feels like it needs a clearer through line and structure, with an easier way to connect stories, to motivate people to read beyond a few characters, or tome stories, or even just watching the cutscenes, for example, because the cutscenes alone don't make too much sense. Loading screens are boring at the moment. It would be nice if you could pick artwork or earn artwork to feature in the loading screens. Additionally, things like your different stats appearing for characters, or lore quotes or entries, Or even more of those developer quotes we get during the anniversary would be a nice addition. Just something to look at. What would be really cool is having a kind of similar thing to something like Skyrim or Fallout, where like an item appears and you can like swivel it around and it tells you cool stuff about it. Yeah, I doubt that something like that would happen, but that would be really cool. Leading on from this, we don't have enough stats, I think, in the game. It would be really nice to have detailed stats on each killer, and the same for survivors. Random things like the number of flashlight saves you've gotten, the number of 4Ks, the number of times you've used your power well. You know, just stuff like that. Just lots of stats would be nice. And these things clearly are tracked somewhere too, because stuff like the achievements run off of them. Chapters seem rushed nowadays, and the schedule of 4 chapters a year feels outdated and needs revising. The game's content keeps increasing in size, but it seems the developers have little time to actually balance it all. Original content often feels neglected compared to licensed content, with many original characters falling to the sidelines and being largely forgotten. The random elements of the game can often feel too many or too extreme, particularly as more content is added. Reduction of randomness could be nice. Not enough time is spent on game health, and time put into the game's long-term problems. Things feel as if they are often fixed with quick patches and fixes, but are never truly addressed, leaving them to get worse, or simply cause more issues. There are still unclear win conditions for each side, and the ones outlined and utilized with MMR are ones that a large number of people disagree with. The game has a bit of an identity issue when it comes to whether it wants to be competitive or casual. Killers are often balanced around high MMR games, but then other things are balanced based on use rates and such, it seems. And it creates a lot of inconsistency. The game is still prone to a lot of bugs. When an update rolls out, it feels like many bugs often come with them, which is a shame. There is an abundance of newer killers with overly complicated kits that can be off-putting. The entry level of the game is still fairly good, but over time is getting worse. There still seems to be a large number of issues in the game with hackers ruining games, this being particularly notable for streamers, a few of whom have spoken about it. The solo queue experience is still not so great. It has been improved in a few ways over the years, but it still feels like there is a large imbalance between solo queuing and survive with friends. There are a lot of things in the game that aren't fun to interact with, ranging from characters, perks, to add-ons. Despite there being many things implemented to try and cause less strategies like tunneling and camping, they are still a fairly big thing within the game that causes lots of unfun moments. It's admittedly something that seems mostly unfixable, but it's still an issue, I think, often making the game unfun to play. Dead by Daylight is still fundamentally the same game it was 6 years ago. This is partly a strength, but I also think it is currently in need of new modes, even if they were introduced in custom games only. But ways to have more killers or change statistics on things would help to really reinvigorate the game for a lot of people, I think. Or even just allowing like a workshop or modding scene so you could do things like prop hunt would be really cool, I think. Alright, well that's gonna do it. I do hope you enjoyed, and be sure to drop any thoughts you have or any additional issues you want to outline down below. Thanks, and goodbye.